Thank you very much.
Hi. My name is Julien Reiman, and I am a freshman. As a freshman, new to everything in this college world, I spend a lot of my time observing. Most of the things I've seen in this new environment have been incredibly encouraging. I've noticed students share meals, do hours of charity work, and simply smile at each other as we walk to class, happy to live with one another. But in my first few months here, I've also seen some things that are not so great, and you all have seen them too. On every corner, classroom, and quad on campus, racial tension exists. Everywhere I look, people of all races fear that both their opinions and the color of their skin will incite anger, or worse, silence from others around them. More than anything, they are desperate to have a voice. What is worse, however, is what I and we see happening outside this university. Like Berlin in 1939 and Cambodia in 1975, Ferguson in 2014 became the epicenter of injustice in the world, along with all of the St. Louis area. Here in our city stands a perfect example of how American racism is not simply an ideology, but a societal system that degrades African Americans while supporting white people. What is happening just down the road, as well as around this country, has one clear message: that racism is not dead. Instead, it is thriving everywhere. Knowing this, I'd like to make one last observation, something that so many have noted in the past few months, that as a collection of extremely intelligent and kind people, concentrated so tightly in these 100 or so acres, this Washington University in St. Louis has an opportunity to help remove the structure of injustice from our city and beyond. The injustice around us, however, may seem unkillable, having created widespread economic inequality, urban decay, and a biased police force that acts with deadly prejudice. These conditions have blanketed our environment, pessimism, pushing us back from the belief that we can make a difference. This is the single source of silence in our community. In order to remove this roadblock of inaction from our crossroads, we must turn to our old friend, the man we are honoring today. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that, "I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality." He promised that truth and unconditional love will have the final word. If we listen to Dr. King's words, we will understand that our opportunity to change our surroundings is so abundantly clear and so within our grasp that it is not simply an optional task, it is a duty. To begin the process of altering our prejudiced world, however, we must look back further than the legacy of Martin Luther King. Decades before Dr. King stood up for human rights, his idol, Mahatma Gandhi, led his nation to freedom with this philosophy: that righteous change comes from the head, the heart, and the hand. In other words, progress takes both deep intelligence and compassionate action. At WashU, we have the intelligence. Our libraries, labs, and lecture halls hold some of the brightest minds on earth. And you might be wondering what our collegiate pursuits have to do with racism in America. My answer is everything. If you think about it, all that we explore here is rooted in the idea of human rights. Take psychology. It's all about how we want people to interact and therefore finding the correct thing to do. On another note, history allows us to look back at countless examples of both heroic and horrible events, teaching us lessons of how to live together today. Even business, furthermore, is all about making personal connections and using them to establish a stable, beneficial environment. And the hard sciences, subjects that are so extremely valued and rigorous at WashU, are all about it. Whether you're studying physics, chemistry, biology, or medicine, you're learning that all of us live under the same rules, are made up of the same materials, function in the same way, and must be cared for equally. This school has so much potential to change our prejudiced greater community. Every person in this room has so much to give to this cause. But following the philosophy of Gandhi as well as Martin Luther King, knowledge, even knowledge interlaced with compassion, means absolutely nothing if action is not taken. Now, WashU has made steps to better our surroundings. Several student groups have proactively organized discussions and demonstrations to make heard our voices. Faculty members and residential leaders have done the same, matching our growing minds with those of seasoned teachers to work toward a better world. But I believe we can do much more. Firstly, WashU needs to improve internally to gain a better capacity to aid those inside and outside our walls. Growth of our Center for Diversity and Inclusion, the committee that helped put on this event, is crucial for progress. With changes, this center can grow to serve as a focal point for our expertise and passions, gathering students from all over the university who, in blending their different forms of intellect, can discover solutions to the injustice that surrounds and consumes us. Such an action, in addition to working toward answers to our pressing problems, will help obliterate students' fears that they lack a voice. But more than that, at its most basic level, actively asking students for help will encourage us to think of our different academic pursuits as interconnected, helpful to the world in more ways than we can imagine. And in addition to amplifying and unifying students' voices, this center needs to match us students with WashU's administrative leaders to help us act upon our unjust society. Such plans could and will include modifying our financial aid system to increase our schools' lacking socioeconomic diversity, and simply making sure that the words and feelings of our leadership, such as those of our chancellor and provost, better reflect those of our students. But while WashU's administration must make changes, we, the students, are the ones who can make a real difference in our neighboring environments. Equipped with our minds and resources, let's go to Ferguson and areas around it to help those in need. Olin students can help rebuild the businesses destroyed by both countless days of inequality and the few nights of violent protest. Our social work and architecture departments can aid urban renewal, and the WashU Law School can work with police departments to develop protocols for not from prejudice, but from justice and equity. In addition to going to Ferguson, let us go to the St. Louis County Department of Justice, the Missouri State Capitol, and even to Washington, D.C., to use our knowledge of the world as well as where we live to make changes to our governmental systems and creeds. The amount of things we can do to change our unjust world is endless. But in all of our uses of our heads and hands, we must remember to use our hearts. We, especially WashU's white majority, which includes myself, must understand that racism in America is a system that gives us so many privileges, most of which we will never know. While we should use what we have to go out into the world and help those in need, the most important action we must take is to listen. Black students at WashU deserve a voice, as do the people of Ferguson, who have almost none at all. Although it may be impossible, we need to attempt to empathize with their struggle, and only then can we attempt to be equal. Now, these are a few of my ideas on how Washington University can do and be better. Imagine what you guys could think of. Imagine the action that could be taken as a proposal. Imagine how much we can change for good. If we act now, our fight against racism could grow into a force of its own. Just as Ferguson is the newest center of injustice, this university could be the headquarters for racial equality in the world, and a hub for the creation of people who understand and care about one another. What I have said may sound to some like vague suggestions from an idealistic freshman. And in reality, they are. I have not experienced depression or financial want. And the short life I have lived is not enough to solve this issue on my own. Young as I am, however, I have been able to see clearly that our ability to act carries real and massive weight. Outside, people are dying. Martin Luther King Jr. once proclaimed that there comes a time when silence is betrayal. This is his prophetic voice, speaking to us unto today. Whether you are the head of our university or a quiet freshman, whether you are pre-med or undecided, whether you are black or white or otherwise, hear his voice. We have to act. We have to meet the challenge that faces us. To quote one of Dr. King's contemporaries, "I do not shrink from this responsibility, I welcome it." Do you? Thank you.